Hey YouTube, Brian Sapient here. Thanks Sorensen for the video. Hope I didn't mispronounce your name. I wanted to touch on this briefly, and then I want to read some Sam Harris. That covers all of this. But you have a good idea. Kind of hard to institute, but it's a good idea that should be out there at least. And obviously, if you had big, huge conventions or something like that, you could do the same thing. Let's say fascist Ron Luce from Battle Cry. He has those 10,000 people, conventions, rock concerts for kids, and makes all of the kids sign their virginity pledge. And you could do something like that, although you shouldn't force the people to sign it. But I've had this idea for a while, and it's not one that I can really institute, but it's kind of funny to think about at least. Christians are against abortion because they believe that life is being killed, human life is being killed, and they, I guess, create a specific moment where it's too late. And that moment is when the sperm fertilizes in the egg. However, if you think about it, the sperm is still potential human life beforehand. If you look at it under a microscope, it looks not much different than, say, a tadpole would look. I think we would all agree that tadpoles are life, and certainly sperm is life. And so I just had this idea when I correlate, the whole no sex before marriage idea. I just had this idea that we should advocate that men and women, married Christian couples, should not have sex. Married Christian couples should not have sex because they are killing millions of potential humans. Now, are you with me? Are you figuring out what I'm talking about? Because what I'm saying here is that if you're unfamiliar, there are approximately 7 million sperm in the typical male ejaculation, and yet only one of them is ever going to reach the egg. So every time you have sex, you kill 6,999,999 potential human beings. This is a travesty. Now, of course, we should blame God for the creation of this system if you believe that God exists. He, of course, is the largest provider of abortions in the history of mankind. Nobody has ever been able to match that rate. Every time you masturbate, you kill off 7 million people. And this is the result of the way that God created the system. Were there to be an intelligent design, you would assume, let me rephrase that. Were there to be an intelligent design where God cares about all life, you would assume that all men would have one super sperm and it would only come out at the time when you were planning on having a child. And any other time that you had sex, no sperm would come out. But this is not the case. Every time a man sits over the toilet and takes care of himself, 7 million kids gone. Every time a married couple has sex, approximately 7 million kids are gone. So I want to create a campaign where we ask married Christian couples, of course, other couples wouldn't do this, if you were a Buddhist or something like that, you don't have these absolutely insane, irrational, and dishonest beliefs. So we would only ask for married Christian couples to do this, and I think that you guys should all take the abstinence pledge to save human life. I don't know, we could call it the 7 million person challenge or something like that. And, every time we can get a married Christian couple to agree to never have sex again for the rest of their life unless they want to have a child, we will have saved millions upon millions of potential life or potential people. So I've never really thought of how to get that campaign to work. It's pretty funny, accurate, rational. I can defend it logically. Makes a lot more sense than what they propose. But I guess it's just an idea, one of those funny things that rattles around in my head. I do want to read from Sam Harris, and I guess if you don't want to hear me go on, it'll be probably, I don't know how long it'll take me to read this. It's only 5 pages, but, he covers sex and morality in Letter to a Christian Nation. So hopefully Sam won't mind me reading this, It's kind of a friend. In fact, check this out. I love that one. For Brian, with admiration, Sam Harris. And great date to sign it, too. Look at that, 9/11/06, which was before the book came out. Yeah, I feel special. Anyway, I want to read a couple pages of this. Pick up the book, Letter to a Christian Nation. In fact, I'll leave it up like that the whole time. So it's a nonstop advertisement. So here you go. First he's talking about HPV a little bit. I'm going to try not to read too much of this, but he talks about AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa and how, by teaching abstinence only from Christian missionaries, they're actually helping the AIDS virus spread in Africa. But here he goes. He says, you believe that your religious concerns, this is page 25, starting on the last sentence of 25. You believe that your religious concerns about sex and all their tiresome immensity have something to do with morality, and yet your efforts to constrain the sexual behavior of consenting adults and even to discourage your own sons and daughters from having premarital sex are almost never geared toward the relief of human suffering. In fact, relieving suffering seems to rank rather low on your list of priorities. He's talking here to the Christians, and you don't understand the concept of this book. Your principal concern appears to be that the creator of the universe will take offense at something people do while naked. This prudery of yours contributes daily to the surplus of human misery. Consider, for instance, the HPV virus. It is now the most commonly sexually transmitted disease in the United States. The virus infects over half the American population and causes nearly 5,000 women to die each year from cervical cancer. The Center for Disease Control estimates that more than 200,000 die worldwide. We now have a vaccine for HPV that appears to be both safe and effective. The vaccine produced 100% immunity in the 6,000 women who received it as part of a clinical trial, and yet Christian conservatives in our government have resisted the vaccination program on the grounds that HPV is a valuable impediment to premarital sex. You sick fucks. These pious men and women want to preserve cervical cancer as an incentive toward abstinence, even if it sacrifices the lives of thousands of women each year. There is nothing wrong with encouraging teens to abstain from having sex, but we know beyond any doubt that teaching abstinence alone is not a good way to curb teen pregnancy or the spread of sexually transmitted disease. In fact, kids who are taught abstinence alone are less likely to use contraceptives when they do have sex, as many of them inevitably will. One study found that teen virginity pledges postpone intercourse for 18 months on average, while in the meantime these virgin teens were more likely than their peers to engage in oral and anal sex. American teenagers engage in about as much sex as teenagers in the rest of the developed world, but American girls are 4 to 5 times more likely to become pregnant, to have a baby, or to get an abortion. Young Americans are also far more likely to be infected by HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases. The rate of gonorrhea among American teens is 70 times higher than it is among their peers in the Netherlands and France. The fact that 30% of our sex education programs teach abstinence only at a cost of more than $200 million a year surely has something to do with this. The problem is that Christians like yourself are not principally concerned about teen pregnancy and the spread of disease. That is, you are not worried about the suffering caused by sex. You are worried about sex. As if this fact needed further corroboration, Reginald Finger, an evangelical member of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, recently announced that he would consider opposing an HIV vaccine, thereby condemning millions of men and women to die unnecessarily from AIDS each year because such a vaccine would encourage premarital sex. You sick fuck. This is one of the many points on which your religious beliefs become genuinely lethal. Your qualms about embryonic stem cell research are similarly obscene. Here are the facts, and this is where this next few paragraphs correlates to my original point. Stem cell research is one of the most promising developments in the last century of medicine. It could offer therapeutic breakthroughs for every disease or injury process that human beings suffer, for the simple reason that embryonic stem cells can become any tissue in the human body. This research may also be essential for our understanding of cancer, along with a wide variety of developmental disorders. Given these facts, it is almost impossible to exaggerate the promise of stem cell research. It is true, of course, that research on embryonic stem cells entails the destruction of 3-day-old embryos. This is what worries you. And this is my point here, okay? Sam makes an interesting point about 3-day-old embryos. I want you to correlate to a Christian who's watching this video who probably would have said at the beginning of the video that sperm isn't life, or sperm isn't potential human life, or something stupid like that. And just kind of put into perspective where does life begin, and how do Christians determine this moment of importance that once the sperm is fertilized, that is the moment in which an abortion can't occur. So he says, let us look at the details. A 3-day-old human embryo is a collection of 150 cells called a blastocyst. There are, for the sake of comparison, more than 100,000 cells in the brain of a fly. The human embryos that are destroyed in stem cell research do not have brains or even neurons. Consequently, there is no reason to believe they can suffer the destruction in any way at all. It is worth remembering in this context that when a person's brain has died, we currently deem it acceptable to harvest his organs, provided he has donated them for this purpose, and bury him in the ground. If it is acceptable to treat a person whose brain has died as something less than a human being, it should be acceptable to treat a blastocyst as such. If you are concerned about suffering in this universe, killing a fly should present you with greater moral difficulties than killing a human blastocyst. Perhaps you think that the crucial difference between a fly and a human blastocyst is to be found in the latter's potential to become a fully developed human being. But almost every cell in your body is a potential human being, given our recent advances in genetic engineering. Every time you scratch your nose, you've committed a holocaust of potential human beings. This is a fact. The argument from a cell's potential gets you absolutely nowhere. But let us assume, for the moment, that every 3-day-old human embryo has a soul worthy of our moral concern. Embryos at this stage occasionally split, becoming separate people, identical twins. Is this a case of one soul splitting into two? Two embryos sometimes fuse into a single individual called a chimera. You or someone you know may have developed in this way. No doubt, theologians are struggling even now to determine what becomes of the extra human soul in such a case. Isn't it time we admitted that this arithmetic of souls does not make any sense? The naive idea of souls in a petri dish is intellectually indefensible. It is also morally indefensible. Christians, you hold the moral low ground on your arguments. Given that it now stands in the way of some of the most promising research in the history of medicine, your beliefs about the soul are, at this very moment, prolonging the scarcely endurable misery of tens of millions of human beings. Get with it.